In the quiet town of Riverfield, the houses sat close together and the streets stayed calm even at night, and from the outside Mila and Ron looked like a normal couple who had a normal life, but inside their home Mila often felt like her voice was getting smaller every month and her hope was getting thinner every week. Mila was the kind of woman who tried to keep peace in every room. She liked warm tea in the evening and soft music while cleaning. She talked kindly to neighbors and smiled even when she felt tired. She believed that if she stayed patient and careful then storms would pass, and for a long time she kept telling herself that Ron was only stressed and that things would settle again. Ron did not start out cruel, at least not in public. In the beginning he was charming and loud in a way people called confident. He liked being seen as the head of the house and he liked people agreeing with him. But slowly his confidence became a habit of control. He wanted things done his way and he wanted Mila to stop asking questions. When he did not get what he wanted he would raise his voice and fill the house with sharp words that left Mila feeling cold inside. Mila did not tell many people what happened behind closed doors. She did not want pity and she did not want gossip. She thought it was better to keep problems private, and she also feared that if anyone knew the truth then the home would become even more tense, so she learned to speak softly and move carefully. She learned to say sorry even when she was not wrong. She learned to hold her feelings like water in a closed bottle. But Mila was not alone in the world. She had a twin sister named Lena, and their bond was so strong that even distance could not weaken it. They were identical in face but different in spirit. Mila chose a quiet life and Lena chose a strict life of training and service. Lena had joined the military and her days were built with discipline, early mornings, hard lessons, and the kind of calm that comes from learning control under pressure. Even when Lena was far away, she still called Mila often. Sometimes it was a quick message and sometimes it was a long call late at night. Mila always tried to sound fine. She would say she was busy or tired or just not feeling well, but Lena could hear the truth hiding under those simple words. Lena did not ask too many questions at first, she only listened, and each time she listened she felt something was not right. One week, Lena got a short break and decided to come home without warning. She wanted to see Mila with her own eyes. She wanted to sit with her at the kitchen table and laugh like they used to. And maybe she wanted to check the house with her own instincts because she had learned to trust that quiet feeling in her chest that says something is wrong. The evening Lena arrived. The sky was orange and the air smelled like dust and winter. She parked her car near the house and walked up slowly. She expected to hear the sound of a television or the clinking of dishes, but instead she heard voices. One voice was low and shaky and the other was loud and rough. Lena stopped near the door and listened without making a sound. Inside the house, Mila stood near the kitchen counter with her hands close to her body like she was trying to make herself smaller. Ron was upset about something that did not matter. A bill, a small mistake, a simple misunderstanding. The topic was not important, but Ron's anger made it feel like the end of the world. Mila tried to explain in a calm voice, but Ron kept cutting her off. He demanded answers while not allowing her to speak. Mila's eyes were wet but she refused to cry loudly. She had learned that tears only made Ron more angry. She kept her voice gentle and her shoulders down. She tried to keep the peace, but Ron stepped closer, his face tight, his jaw locked, and his words came faster and harsher. Mila took a step back and her heel tapped the floor. The sound was small but Lena heard it clearly from outside. Then something happened that made Lena's entire body go still. Ron lifted his hand in the air in a fast motion, not touching, not landing, but moving in a way that made Mila flinch instantly. And that flinch told Lena everything she needed to know, because flinching is not learned in one day, it is learned by fear repeating itself. Lena opened the door and stepped inside with steady feet. She did not shout and she did not run. She moved like someone who knew how to take control without noise. Ron's hand was still raised in the air, and before it could come any closer to Mila, Lena reached out and caught his wrist firmly, stopping the motion mid-air as if she had paused time. Ron froze, his eyes widened, and for a second he looked confused because Lena's face looked like Mila's face. He blinked hard and looked from Lena to Mila. Mila gasped and her lips trembled. The room fell silent except for Mila's breathing. Lena's grip was not violent and it was not shaky. It was controlled, strong, and calm. Ron tried to pull his wrist back but Lena did not move. She stood like a wall, her posture straight, her shoulders relaxed, and her eyes focused. She spoke in a low voice that carried weight, and her words were clear and simple. "This stops now," Lena said. Ron stared at her as if he could not accept what was happening. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice smaller than before. Lena looked at Mila for a moment, and in that look Mila felt a kind of safety she had not felt in a long time. Then Lena looked back at Ron and answered, "I am her sister, and you will not raise your hand in this house again." Ron's face changed from confusion to anger, but Lena did not react to the anger. She did not step back and she did not match his energy. She kept her voice even. In the military Lena had learned that a calm person can control a storm. She had learned that the loudest person is not always the strongest person. Ron tried to act big again. He pulled his shoulder back and said, "This is my house. You cannot tell me what to do." Lena did not argue, she simply adjusted her grip slightly so he felt the strength without pain, and then she let his wrist go on purpose, because she wanted him to understand that she was choosing control, not losing control. She stepped half a step forward so Ron had to face her fully, and Mila stayed behind Lena, still shaking but no longer alone. "You do not own this house," Lena said, "and you do not own my sister, and you do not get to use fear to win an argument." Ron looked around as if searching for words, but his words did not come easily now, because the usual power he relied on was gone. Mila's silence used to make him feel like he was winning, but Lena's calm made him feel exposed. Mila whispered Lena's name and tears finally slipped down her cheeks, not tears of weakness, but tears of release, because someone had seen the truth and had stepped in without blaming her. Lena reached back and touched Mila's hand gently for 1 second, a small touch that told her she was safe. Lena then turned back to Ron and spoke again, still in that steady voice, "You will sit down, you will listen, and you will speak with respect. If you cannot do that, then you will leave this room, because from this moment you are not allowed to scare her." Ron's lips tightened. He wanted to argue, but the calm strength in Lena's eyes made him pause. He had never been challenged like this, not by shouting, not by insults, but by quiet authority, and for the first time in a long time the room did not belong to his mood, the room belonged to truth. Outside, the sun disappeared fully and the windows turned dark like mirrors. Inside, Mila stood behind her sister, breathing slowly, and Lena stood between Mila and Ron like a line that could not be crossed. That night was not the end of the story, but it was the beginning of a change, because fear had been interrupted, and once fear is interrupted, it becomes harder for it to return in the same way, and as Ron looked at Lena he realized he was facing someone who would not be manipulated, someone who would not be shaken, and someone who would not allow Mila to be treated as if her voice did not matter. Mila did not know what would happen next, but for the first time she felt something that looked like hope, and Lena did not come home to create drama. She came home to protect her sister and to make sure Mila remembered who she was, because sometimes a person forgets their own strength until someone stands beside them and reflects it back. And in the silence that followed, Ron finally understood that the rules had changed, and Lena was not leaving until Mila was safe and respected, no matter how uncomfortable that truth made him feel. The air inside the house stayed heavy after Lena spoke, and even though no one raised their voice, the tension felt louder than any shouting could be, and Ron stood near the table trying to find his balance while Mila stayed close behind Lena as if her sister had become the wall between fear and safety. Ron slowly lowered himself into a chair because for the first time he was not sure what else to do, and the calm look on Lena's face made him feel smaller than he wanted to feel, and Mila watched him with wide eyes because she had never seen him sit down during a moment like this before. Lena did not smile and she did not look angry, she simply stayed steady, and that steadiness was more powerful than any loud word, and she pulled another chair closer to Mila so her sister could sit too, and Mila did with slow careful movements as if she was afraid that any wrong motion might break the peace that had just been created. The room became quiet and the only sound was the ticking of a small clock on the wall, and that sound felt like a reminder that time was moving forward and that what was said next would matter for a long time. Ron finally spoke, but his voice was not sharp now, it was uncertain, and he said he did not mean to cause trouble and that he was only upset, and Lena listened without cutting him off, and Mila listened too even though her hands were still shaking. Lena waited until Ron finished his words and then she spoke in a simple calm way, and she said that being upset was not an excuse to scare someone and that anger does not give anyone the right to make another person feel small, and Ron looked down at the table because he did not like hearing those words but he could not deny them. Mila wanted to speak but her voice felt stuck in her throat, so Lena gently placed a hand on her back, and that small touch gave Mila the strength she needed, and Mila slowly told Ron how she felt when he spoke harshly and how she felt when he stepped too close and how she always felt like she was walking on thin ice in her own home. Ron looked surprised as if he had never really thought about how Mila felt, and he tried to say something but Lena raised one finger, not in a threatening way but in a way that asked for a pause, and she said that Mila was speaking and that she deserved to be heard without interruption. Mila took a deep breath and continued, and her words came out slow and honest, and she said that she loved peace and that she wanted their home to feel safe and warm and not filled with worry, and she said that she missed the days when Ron used to laugh with her and not look at her with anger in his eyes. Ron rubbed his forehead and for a moment he looked tired instead of strong, and Lena watched him closely because she knew that tired people can either change or break, and this moment would show which one he would choose. Outside, the wind brushed against the windows and the evening grew darker, but inside the room a different kind of light began to grow, a light made of truth and careful words, and for the first time in a long while Mila did not feel invisible. Lena spoke again and she told Ron that if he wanted to stay in Mila's life he would need to change the way he acted, and that respect was not something that could be asked for but something that had to be shown every day, and Ron nodded slowly even though it was clear that these words were hard for him to accept. Mila looked at Lena with gratitude because her sister had not come to fight but to protect and to guide, and Lena was doing exactly that with calm strength and clear boundaries. Later that night, Lena stayed with Mila in her room while Ron remained in the living room, and the sisters sat on the bed like they used to when they were younger, and Mila finally let herself cry because she did not have to be strong alone anymore. Lena held Mila and told her that she was not weak for wanting peace and that she was not wrong for asking to be treated with care, and Mila felt something inside her heal just a little. The next morning the house felt different, as if a new air had entered, and Ron moved more slowly as if he was aware that every step he took mattered now, and Mila noticed that he did not speak harshly, and that small change felt strange but hopeful. Lena stayed for several days, and during that time she watched everything closely, not in a harsh way but in a careful way, because she wanted to make sure Mila was truly safe, and Mila felt more confident with her sister near. Ron tried to act better, and sometimes he did well and sometimes he struggled, but Lena did not let small things turn into big problems, and when Ron started to raise his voice she would calmly remind him to lower it and speak with respect, and somehow that worked better than any argument. Mila slowly began to find her voice again, and she started to speak up when something made her uncomfortable, and each time she did Lena gave her a small nod of encouragement, and Ron listened even if it was not easy for him. One afternoon Mila and Lena went for a walk in the park, and the fresh air made Mila feel lighter, and she told Lena that she had forgotten what it felt like to walk without fear, and Lena smiled softly and said that this was how life should feel and that Mila deserved this peace every day. Mila asked Lena if she would have to go back soon, and Lena nodded and said that her work would call her again, but that did not mean she would leave Mila unprotected, because strength does not disappear just because someone walks away. Lena told Mila that she had to believe in her own strength and that she had to remember that she was not alone, and that if she ever felt scared again she could call and Lena would come back if needed. Back at the house, Ron was cooking a simple meal, and when Mila returned he looked at her and asked how her walk was, and it was a small question but it showed effort, and Mila answered honestly, and Lena watched this exchange with quiet attention. The evening passed without tension, and they all sat at the table and ate together, and it felt strange but also hopeful because this was the kind of normal life Mila had always wanted. Later that night Ron told Mila that he was sorry for making her feel small, and his words were not perfect but they were real, and Mila listened and did not rush to forgive because trust takes time, but she felt that something was shifting. Lena knew that real change was not built in one day, but she also knew that this moment was important because it was the first step towards something better. As the days passed, Ron continued to try, and Mila continued to speak, and Lena continued to guide, and the house slowly became a place where quiet did not mean fear but peace. Mila started to sleep better and her smiles became more real, and Ron started to understand that being strong did not mean being loud but being kind. When Lena finally had to prepare to leave, she sat with Mila one last time and reminded her that she was brave and that she had the right to feel safe, and Mila promised that she would not forget. Ron watched Lena leave and he felt a mix of respect and worry because he knew that she would always be there in spirit and that her presence had changed everything. And as the door closed behind Lena, the house did not fall back into darkness because Mila now carried light inside her, and that light was something no one could take away again. The house felt calmer after Lena left, but the calm was new and fragile like a glass that had just been placed on the table, and Mila moved through her days with careful hope while Ron tried to keep his promises, and both of them knew that change was not a simple thing that happens in one night. Mila started waking up earlier in the morning because her mind was no longer filled with fear, and she enjoyed sitting near the window with her tea watching the light touch the street, and she felt a small joy in those quiet moments that had once felt heavy. Ron noticed these changes and he felt something inside him shift because he could see that Mila was becoming more alive, and even though he did not always know how to show it, he wanted to keep that light in her eyes. Sometimes old habits tried to return, and when Ron felt stressed he would begin to speak louder, but then he would remember Lena's calm voice and Mila's honest words, and he would stop himself and take a deep breath, and that small pause made a big difference. Mila noticed this too, and each time Ron paused instead of raising his voice she felt a small piece of trust grow, and she started to believe that maybe this new path could last. Days passed and weeks followed, and the house began to feel like a home again instead of a place filled with worry, and Mila started doing things she had once loved, like tending to her small garden and listening to soft music in the evening. Ron even joined her in the garden one afternoon and he asked her about the flowers, and Mila smiled because she had missed moments like that when simple things were shared without tension. One evening Mila received a message from Lena, and it said that she was proud of her and that she was glad Mila was finding her strength, and Mila read the message more than once because those words meant more to her than Lena could ever know. Mila replied and told Lena that things were better and that she was speaking more and feeling stronger, and Lena sent back a simple heart, and that was enough. At the same time Ron was trying to understand himself in a way he never had before, and he started to realize that his need for control had come from his own fears and not from strength, and that was a hard truth to face. He began to read books about calm and communication, and even though he did not tell Mila about it at first, his actions slowly showed his effort, and Mila noticed that he was listening more and reacting less. One day Ron came home with 2 cups of tea and handed one to Mila, and they sat together quietly, and for a moment it felt like the early days of their relationship when things were gentle and hopeful. Mila looked at Ron and said that she was glad he was trying, and Ron nodded and said that he was learning, and those simple words held more meaning than any long speech. The town around them continued its usual rhythm, with people going to work and children playing in the streets, and life moved forward, and inside that small house a quiet change was taking place. Sometimes Mila still felt afraid when voices rose outside or when a door closed too loudly, but she reminded herself that she was not alone and that she had a voice, and that made those fears fade faster than before. Ron noticed when Mila seemed uneasy, and instead of ignoring it he would ask if she was okay, and that simple question made Mila feel seen and valued. One afternoon Mila decided to visit the small cafe near the park, something she had not done alone in a long time, and she sat by the window and watched people pass by, and she felt a sense of freedom that warmed her heart. When she returned home, Ron asked about her day, and she told him about the cafe and the birds in the park, and Ron listened with interest, and that made Mila smile. As weeks turned into months, the changes became part of daily life and not just something new and fragile, and Mila felt stronger in her own skin and Ron felt calmer in his mind. One evening Lena called, and Mila answered with a bright voice and told her sister about the garden and the cafe and the tea, and Lena listened with happiness because she could hear the difference in Mila's tone. Lena told Mila that she was doing well and that she should be proud of herself, and Mila felt a warmth in her chest that stayed long after the call ended. Ron also spoke to Lena during that call, and he thanked her for coming when she did, and Lena told him that it was Mila's strength that made the real change, and Ron understood that this was true. The house continued to grow into a place of respect and calm, and Mila started to feel like she was building a new future with her own hands. One rainy day Mila and Ron sat together and watched the rain, and Mila told Ron about her dreams of maybe starting a small home business, and Ron listened and said he would support her, and that promise felt sincere. Mila began to plan and dream again, and those dreams filled her days with light and purpose. Sometimes she would think about the moment Lena had stopped everything and how that single act had changed her life, and she felt grateful for that turning point. Ron also remembered that moment, and it stayed in his mind as a reminder of what he never wanted to become again, and that memory kept him grounded. The town of Riverfield saw Mila walking with more confidence, and neighbors noticed her smiles and her relaxed posture, and no one knew the full story, but everyone could see that something good was happening. Mila felt proud of herself for not giving up and for finding her strength, and she knew that even if challenges came, she now had the tools to face them. Ron continued to work on himself, and sometimes he would stumble, but he would always try again, and that effort mattered. As another season arrived, the leaves changed color and the air grew cooler, and the house felt warm with quiet understanding and mutual respect. Mila and Ron were not perfect, and they did not pretend to be, but they were learning together, and that made all the difference. And in that simple house with its small garden and soft light, Mila felt something she had not felt in a long time, a sense of peace that was real and lasting. The new season brought gentle winds to Riverfield, and the small garden behind Mila's house started to bloom with soft colors and fresh leaves, and every morning Mila stepped outside to feel the cool air on her face, and she felt thankful for how far her life had come. She remembered the days when even breathing felt heavy inside the house, but now each breath felt light and easy, and this change was not magic, it was built slowly by courage, honesty, and support. Ron had also changed in ways that even he did not expect, and he no longer felt the need to control every moment, and he was learning that listening was just as powerful as speaking, and that kindness created a stronger bond than fear ever could. Mila started her small home business just like she had dreamed, and she made simple handmade items that brought joy to people in town, and every time someone smiled because of her work, she felt proud of herself. Ron helped her set up a small table near the window where sunlight could fall on her work, and that small act showed how much he now respected her dreams. Neighbors began to visit and talk, and Mila felt more connected to the world around her, and the house that once felt quiet and tense now felt alive and welcoming. One afternoon Lena came back to visit, and when Mila saw her sister step through the door, she felt a rush of happiness and gratitude, and they hugged for a long time. Lena looked around the house and noticed how peaceful it felt, and she smiled because she knew her sister was safe and strong. Ron greeted Lena with respect, and even though he felt a little nervous, he also felt thankful because Lena had helped him see the truth, and that truth had led him to become a better person. They all sat together and talked and laughed, and it felt natural and warm, and Mila realized that this was what she had always wanted, a home filled with calm voices and gentle smiles. Lena stayed for a few days, and she spent time with Mila in the garden and in the kitchen, and they talked about old memories and new dreams. Mila told Lena about her business and her plans for the future, and Lena listened with pride and told her that she had built this new life with her own strength. Ron also shared how he was trying to grow, and Lena encouraged him to keep choosing respect and patience, and Ron promised that he would. One evening they all walked to the park together and watched the sunset, and the sky turned soft shades of pink and gold, and the moment felt peaceful and full of hope. Mila looked at her sister and her husband and felt a sense of balance that she had never known before. After Lena left again, the house did not feel empty because Mila carried her sister's support inside her and Ron carried the lessons he had learned in his heart. Life continued with small challenges and small joys, and Mila faced each day with confidence and Ron faced each day with calm. Sometimes Mila would remember how afraid she once was, and she would gently remind herself of how far she had come, and that memory gave her strength. The garden grew fuller, and so did Mila's heart, and she found happiness in simple things like morning light and quiet afternoons. Ron continued to support Mila's dreams, and he felt proud of the home they were building together. One day Mila received a letter from Lena, and it spoke of pride and love, and Mila held it close because those words meant everything to her. As time went on, Mila and Ron built a life based on respect and understanding, and their home became a place where kindness lived. Neighbors saw their smiles and their peaceful way, and no one could guess the struggles that had once been there, but Mila knew, and that knowledge made her grateful. Mila realized that her story was not about fear but about strength, and that strength had been inside her all along, waiting to be seen. Ron realized that real power came from love and patience, and that lesson changed him forever. The seasons changed, and Riverfield remained calm and steady, and inside one small house a story of courage and growth continued to unfold. Mila woke each morning with hope, and Ron woke with a desire to be better, and together they created a life that felt true and gentle. And so the story did not end with anger or pain, but with peace and respect and the quiet happiness that comes from choosing kindness every day.